Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to English Storytime with Mark. I'm Mark. Today we're going to be reading another story by O. Henry. We read a couple of his stories so far. This one is entitled The Witches Loaves. So listen for the ironic twist ending at the end, which is the hallmark of an O. Henry story. So let's see what this one's all about. The Witches Loaves. Miss Martha Meacham owned a small bakery on a quiet street. Every morning she arrived early to prepare fresh bread, rolls, and cakes, filling the air with the warm smell of baking. She was a kind woman, about 40 years old, with soft gray eyes and a warm smile. Though her bakery was small, it was her pride and joy. Many customers visited her shop daily. Busy workers, mothers with children, and old men who sat outside chatting. She liked them all, but one particular customer caught her attention more than anyone else. A tall, thin man with gray hair and serious eyes came to her bakery almost every other day. His face was lean, as if he didn't eat enough, and his clothes were always the same: an old brown coat, a worn-out hat, and shoes that had seen better days. He never looked in the display case at the cakes or fresh bread. Instead, he went straight to the counter and asked for 2 stale loaves of bread. Miss Martha found this strange. Why would he always buy stale bread? She sold it at a lower price, of course, since it was dry and hard, but most customers only bought it to feed birds or to make breadcrumbs. But this man, he was different. She watched him carefully, trying to guess his story. Perhaps he was an artist, she thought. His hands sometimes had ink stains or maybe charcoal, and his fingers looked rough. Maybe he lived in a small attic studio, struggling to create beautiful paintings. Or maybe he was a writer, lost in thought, too poor to afford fresh food. Miss Martha felt a deep sympathy for him. She imagined him sitting in a cold, dark room, alone, with only stale bread and water for his meals. Her heart ached for him. One morning, as she arranged fresh loaves on the shelves, she thought, I wish I could help him. But how? If she simply gave him fresh bread, he might refuse, feeling embarrassed. She considered putting an extra roll in his bag by mistake, but that might be too obvious. Then an idea came to her, a perfect, cunning plan. The next time the thin man entered her bakery, she was ready. He stepped inside as usual, nodded politely, and said in a quiet voice, 2 loaves of stale bread, please. Miss Martha took the loaves from the shelf behind her, but before wrapping them, she carefully cut them open and spread a thin layer of butter inside. She smiled to herself, imagining his surprise when he bit into the bread. He would taste the rich, creamy butter and know that someone cared. She quickly wrapped the loaves and handed them to him. He paid, nodded again, and walked out without noticing anything different. Miss Martha felt warm inside. That afternoon, she imagined him sitting at a small wooden table, unwrapping the bread. Perhaps he would smile for the first time in weeks. Maybe the butter would remind him of happier days. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't hear the bell on the bakery door ring. The man had returned. But something was different. His face, usually calm and serious, was now red with anger. He held the 2 loaves in his hands, gripping them tightly. You have ruined my work, he shouted, slamming the loaves onto the counter. Miss Martha took a step back, shocked. I don't understand, she stammered. I am an artist, the man said, his voice shaking. I use stale bread to erase charcoal sketches. I was working on an important drawing, and now the butter has ruined everything. Miss Martha felt the blood drain from her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I have been coming here for years, the man continued, his voice full of frustration. I trusted your bread, but today you decided to play a joke on me. It wasn't a joke, Miss Martha said softly. I thought you were hungry. I wanted to help. The man looked at her for a moment, then sighed. He shook his head, picked up his ruined loaves, and walked out of the bakery without another word. For a long time, Miss Martha stood there, feeling foolish. She had imagined herself as a kind helper, bringing comfort to a struggling artist, but she had never considered that she might be wrong. After that day, the thin man never returned. Miss Martha continued her work, but something had changed. She still smiled at her customers, but she no longer imagined their lives or tried to solve their problems in secret. She had learned an important lesson. Kindness is good, but assuming too much can lead to unexpected consequences. And so she went back to selling bread, fresh or stale, to those who asked for it, exactly as they wanted. The end. So once again, an unforeseen outcome from an act of kindness. O. Henry certainly had a talent for imagining situations like this. I hope you enjoyed this story. O. Henry's such a great writer. I hope you'll find a collection of his short stories and try to read it. Although I think you'll find that the language he uses, early 20th century tone that he used, is a little bit tricky to understand, even for me, a native speaker. But stick with my show and you'll be able to find it read in a way that is easier for a modern audience to understand. I hope you've enjoyed the story today. I sure have enjoyed spending time with you, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye for now.